3, 2, 1. Welcome back, everyone. This is a treat. This is a treat for me. This is level 8, the castle level. Aside from the final boss song, which will be coming up in this series, this is probably the rippinest track that I have on the soundtrack from like a tempo perspective. So here it is. So goofy dance moves aside, that is a pretty ripping track, and it was something I even had to scale back a bit. I was worried that might be too much because, you know, when I'm unrestrained, when it's just like, hey, go ahead and make a track, go ahead and go nuts, it's almost always too nuts. So that was one that, you know, I kind of unleashed the beast just a bit on, and in case you couldn't guess it, there was two influences on that one. Castlevania 2 and Mega Man 2. Those were both two games I owned growing up. And it's no surprise that, you know, if I get onto a galloping beat, like you hear here, that I just hear Mega Man 2. And it's weird. It's not something that I did intentionally, which I have done in the past where I've tried to recreate songs in the Nintendo and then go on from there. Like when you're younger, I think music can stick in your head more because, like, okay, when I was 7 playing Mega Man 2, I'd only heard so many songs in my life at that point. So if a song is important to me at that point in my life, it's immensely important to me at that point in my life. More important than when you're older and you've heard more stuff and it's all weighing together. So there's like a special chunk in my brain that it just like hears this riff. So obviously I'll put a little annotation for the track that's inspired by, but yeah, it's not me trying to be like, oh, I'm gonna lift this from Mega Man 2. It's just like that's what I hear in my head when there's a gallop, and it's because there's like this special reserved part of my brain. But then with Castlevania 2, not really anywhere in particular am I, or where was it? There's like a couple of neoclassic parts here that I kind of... What about the ending here? You know, like, you can make a case for that, but I don't know. Like, once you start using the harmonic minor scale, it's like Castlevania 2 stuff just gets written, especially when you're writing NES music. It's fun, actually. You know, why don't I do a little section on the harmonic minor scale here? Could be fun for people that maybe don't know. Let's see what the drums sound like here. That's maybe too intense. Yeah, I'll take these drums. I'll duplicate this. And I'm going to remove everything here. Ugh. Ugh. No, let's bring the old bass line back in. That last note should be the one that gives it away, but let's see what we can do here. So we're in A, and I'm typically using, let's see what 22 is. So I'm going to play you the harmonic. Or actually, I'll play you the, and okay, my terminology in the next section is probably going to make actual music theory people mad. But that's not who this series is for. This is for people that don't, if you're like me and you just learned it on your own, you found your own way to explain it, and it might not even be correct, but if you can get down to the nugget of what I'm trying to talk about, then you can take something away from it, even if you know the music theory behind it. Okay, so that's just your typical Aeolian mode. And that's basically playing the major scale, starting on the 6th note of the major scale, which in this case would be the A. And I don't have my guitar in my hands, but I'm pretty sure all of that checks out. But if you want to play a harmonic minor scale, what you have to do is notice how I said before that the G sharp was a dead giveaway. All we have to do in this little thing I've written here is change one note and we're in harmonic minor. So whereas I'm going to leave the Aeolian in the top half and we're going to go to harmonic minor in the second half. Wait, why was there 3? Did I miss one? You can go back to a normal one. Okay, let's see how that sounds. Yeah, harmonic minor is something, it's a scale that is really heavily utilized in Baroque music and neoclassical music like Yngwie Malmsteen. And all the Castlevania would dip into the harmonic minor, so it's a really fun one to dip into when you just want to blatantly sound like Castlevania. But then if you add yourself a little galloping riff in here, so the gallop is basically da 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 da, and so you can see right here da 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 da, same thing. So if you add yourself a little gallop in there, and a technique that Meshuggah uses a lot is if you want your rhythm section to have like a slam and rhythm section, just always have a kick drum hit at the same time as a palm mute. So on a guitar, a palm mute is where you rest your palm on the strings and then just do it, and it's like, but it's not a sustained note. So if you combine the bass and the palm mutes together with kick drums, that's exactly what Meshuggah does, because they really want you to hear the rhythm that they're playing, because rhythm's a big thing with Meshuggah and their polyrhythms, but that's not what I'm doing here. All I want is that Meshuggah heaviness, so I've got a kick drum hitting every time the bass hits, because I want it to be combined for like ultimate power. And I'm not even bothering to do the alternating method that I showed last video. I just wanted this one to have some power. No, we don't need that. Let's get that out of here. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I don't... Other than that, I think that's most of the heft on this track that I wanted to go over. I mean, I would do a whole section on harmonic minor, but I'm sure I can just find a link to a harmonic minor thing that would probably help you out more than me trying to explain harmonic minor. But needless to say, I've always enjoyed that On a guitar, I find it hard to play harmonic minor because there's a gap that's kind of uncomfortable for my fingers. It's a gap that's slightly larger than any scale or mode in the major scale, but I like the way it sounds. But I can't play it as fast as I can play the other scales. So the fun thing with chiptunes is, like, you can play it as fast as you want. You can rip that thing. Just do a ripping solo. As such. Anyways, that's all the actual tracks on this, or patterns on this. Let's see what's in the deleted scenes. Oh, actually, this intro. Pretty similar to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1 intro. It's just I don't know, it's another one of those things where it's just ingrained in my head. That's just a drum fill, a riff that I hear a lot because of that game. What can you do? What can you do? All right, back to those deleted scenes. What do we got here? Using a little of that Magnet Man technique. Kind of not very tight. A lot of different stuff. It's the variation, I guess. Oh, that was almost cool. Ooh, that's trying to do a little key change there. Here's something I noticed happens a lot with chiptunes. Since you're looking at it a lot of times, you can kind of tell exactly what note is off. And sometimes it's a note that's in the scale and it just doesn't make sense why it's off. And sometimes it can be because you're doubling up on, like, how do I explain this? If you have like a synthesizer, two synths, separate synths, and you play the same exact key on both synths, it sometimes sounds fine because they're just slightly different enough that they phase together in a nice way. But with these samples especially, if you hit the same note somewhere, so you got your two square wave channels here, and sometimes they are playing two separate parts, but sometimes those two separate parts need to hit the same note. And if they hit the same note using the same sample even, you're going to get like a buzz or a sound that stands out, and you don't want that. And so a lot of times it becomes almost like a little puzzle, a little like puzzle game where you've written, you know what it needs to sound like, but you're trying to get it to work as a Nintendo song so that it doesn't have any buzzing or anything like that. So this is kind of how it goes for me. I basically try at this stage, like there's a songwriting stage where you hear melodies in your head and you're like, okay, I'm going to create that melody. And that's normal. But the extra layer when you're making Nintendo stuff is now you have to play this little puzzle game to configure your melody in a way that will not have weird, awkward buzzing sounds. So this is me sort of trying every note until I got the ones that I eventually kept in the song. So here's like an alternate version that is different notes, and it's just me like, well, does this work? Does this work? Does this work? As heard here. Like, can you even hear that there? Here we go. Yeah, well, I mean, I could hear it, but there's a B6 playing, and there's another B6 playing. And, yeah, at that point... Oh, no, here, check this out, too. This is even worse. This is an A6 that gets note slided up. Note slid? note slid up by 2 frets on a guitar, so that would slide it to B6. So this row here is playing B6, and this one ends up playing a B6 as well, and it just ends up being too loud, man. Wait, did I goof it up? Well, I think I effed something up there. Yeah. 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 Sorry, I changed the note, or the instrument. It's just too much B6 right there, so I must have known that back when I wrote the song as well, and said like, no, I can't have that in there. I got to try a different note, even though that might have been the note I wanted, and it would have sounded fine if you're playing it on guitar or another instrument that, you know, is not samples. Because even the Nintendo itself, when it would play notes, it did it with slight variation each time, because it's running on hardware and it's simulating voltage going in, and you've seen me zoom in on the samples before, and they have just a little variation, like this little lip here, like, and it's not a perfect line, like it can't just go straight down. Like, that'd be an amazing piece of technology that like has no you know, it'd be, well, I don't know if it's amazing, but you know, when you start looking at the actual, when you start breaking down hardware in the literal world, you see that it's not so digital. Like, it can't be, because it's, I don't know, I don't even know how to explain that, but when you're dealing with samples, you can run into a problem, because every time I hit this note, it's the exact same look. Like, this is like, okay, what I'm trying to say is the Nintendo, each time you hit this note, these little lips and things would just be slightly different each time. But when you make a sample of that, it's the same every time. So that's why what I tried to do was make long samples, so I had as much variation as I could before it would loop, so that you could hit a long sustained note, and you could play another sustained long note with it, and you would never, hopefully never, get a spot where, because of the sample being the same, you get kind of that weird sound that you don't want. So that's why a lot of these patterns are kind of like whack-a-mole. Like, try this note, does that work? Try this note, does that work? And it's not my desired melody, but it's just, this is the give and take that you have to do when you're trying to complete a Nintendo song. What else we got? Okay, now we're at the new stuff. A little different, and this is way different. Oh man, I remember there's a pretty ripping solo coming up that I had to completely remove because it just didn't fit. Okay, here we go. Couldn't find a place for it. So you hear me basically trying every note I can. Like I've written the structure of the song. I know what I want this pattern to sound like, and for all intents and purposes, the pattern I keep, the one that's in the song, is me getting it right finally. And this is me trying to get to that, because I'm, as a musician that is not formally trained or anything like that, this is just my method. This is how I come up with the notes, because like there's almost a feeling like I know what it's going to sound like when I hear it, but I can't actually tell you what note it is. Like, I don't have perfect pitch. Like, I couldn't just randomly hit a note on the keyboard. Oh dear, I've got it set to start something. I can't just hit a random note, not looking at it, and be able to tell you what note I'm hitting, because that's what perfect pitch is, and that's a pretty rare thing. You can get decent relative pitch, where you can sort of know what a note sounds like because you've heard it a lot of times in a certain song or something, but true perfect pitch is a pretty rare thing. So I don't have that, so I need to I need to rely on this sort of method, especially with chiptunes, because you can't even see, like when you're working in Cubase or something, you can see the little piano roll there, and then you can tell what note it is just by looking at it, because certain black keys and whatever, you just know what you're looking at. Even if you're bad at knowing the note names, seeing which key it is will help you. You could just look at it and be like, yep, that's what I want. But when you're looking at this, that doesn't really help, like C, D, D sharp, like it doesn't help at all. But that's also kind of the fun part of writing chiptunes in this way, because I'll be having a pattern on loop for hours, and I keep hearing new directions to go in. So in a way, this method allows me to get to this really, really deep down distilled core concept that like I would never have got to if I was just able to be like, yep, that's the riff I want, moving on. Like you basically have to stay on there and then write all your notes and be like, that note's not working, I don't know why. And then like if you change it to a wrong note, but it's also a note that sounds good, now all of a sudden you hear another idea like, okay, I want to go in that direction now. So within one pattern, you're basically doing a whole song's worth of like misdirection and pattern changes, or like direction changes. So, it takes a long time, but you end up with a pretty, like, I would explain it almost like if you could analyze every one of my tracks and like look at a spreadsheet, like this is how many times he's done this and how many times he's done that, and then like just dump that information out. That would be your thumbprint, like your musical thumbprint. Like this is just where he goes. This is the ideas that come out of his head most often, and that'd be awesome. I'd love to check that out if there were such a thing. But for now, you can just listen to your tracks, and another way of thinking about it is that's kind of your style. And other musicians will hear that and be like, yep, that sounds like one of his tracks or her tracks. Oh, man. Early track. This is me, like, okay, what does Baroque music sound like? Okay. Click track here. Nope, that's an old bit. You heard all that stuff before. I find this kind of fascinating. It's a totally unfinished track, but this is basically the scale that I play in, I think. And you can see the little click track here, and this is just me trying to get a feel for this harmonic minor. So I pretty early on, like, okay, check this out. This is pattern 49. Yeah, you can see that. This is pattern 49. And by the time I'd accepted pattern 52, I'd already sort of decided like, oh, okay, this is the way my song's actually going to sound. Anyways, another fairly short video. 30 minutes, not that short. We've got a few more songs to go over, and they're coming up in the following days. Other than that, thanks again for checking out the video, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for watching this video. We'll see you guys next time. Feel free to subscribe to this channel.